That last comment from the opposition spokesman on economic development in many ways typifies Labor's problem. He quotes some chap who's done a little bit of analysis in Australia, and see once again, they look for the silver bullet all the time. They look for someone else to tell them what to do and how to do it. Well, I think it is extraordinary that this government could be coming in here, this opposition could be coming in here today questioning the government about economic direction, when having just, I suppose, been booted by the New Zealand public after 9 years of exceptional mismanagement, they expect everything to change overnight. Other than that, they expect us to believe that what they were doing was absolutely perfect. What they were doing apparently was exactly right. Well, Mr. Speaker, it should come as no surprise to anybody that during the 8-9 years of the Labor government, the New Zealand GDP rose by, per capita, rose $10,700. Now that sounds great, doesn't it? Our per capita GDP over that 9-year period rose by $10,700 odd. But, Mr. Speaker, if you look across the Tasman, Australia's GDP during that time rose by $19,700, almost twice the rate. Twice the rate. And they come in here being all righteous about what they were doing, attacking the current government, expecting that after 9 years of abject failure, everything should be put right in 15 months. Well, that is utterly pathetic. And the member over there calls out, how about something? He's still after the silver bullet, and it doesn't exist. And fortunately, the government doesn't pretend it exists. What we have said is that New Zealand needs to lift its economic performance across all of the sectors of this country's economy. And that's what we're about. That's what we're about. And that's been our record over the last 15 or so months. Mr. Speaker, I remember the last government coming in 2000, setting up the Jobs machine. What a huge and abject failure that was. That apparently was a milestone that they could be measured against, and it was an utter failure. Mr. Speaker, having failed then, they brought in what they called economic transformations. That was going to be a milestone that they could be measured on. Well, I've just explained that the New Zealand economy went back for those 9 years, so that didn't go too well. And then they came out with this wonderful thing called Fast Forward New Zealand. Fast Forward New Zealand. The problem was, after 6 years, they actually recognised that they were in some sort of replay, and so they had to rename it to New Zealand Fast Forward. They brought in the growing and innovative New Zealand, the growth and innovation framework. What happened to it? Where is it? What was the new stuff that happened in New Zealand during those 9 disastrous years? It simply doesn't exist. Mr. Speaker, then on the eve of the election, 2 years out, they said, we better do something. So they brought in the economic transformation agenda. Well, where is it? What happened to it? Where did it go to? Mr. Speaker, by comparison, the government of New Zealand today has a much, much simpler approach to things. Firstly, we want to recognise the parts of the economy that can grow, and we've done that. And we're talking to them and we're assisting them. And the second thing is we're going to get out of their road, and we've done that through changes to the Resource Management Act, to the way in which we require all sorts of compliance, and also through the tax system. Mr. Speaker, we have rebalanced that tax system in favour of savings and productive investment. We have reformed the electricity market, or in the process of it. Look at that, that's just one small sector. 72% price rises in 9 years compared to the much, much flatter rate that we have achieved in such a very short period of time. And then, of course, there is the support that goes into business. One of the ironies, of course, is that I discovered that New Zealand Trade and Enterprise have been handing out these things called market development grants. And if you gave Tim Anderton or Pete Hodgson or Marion Street or Trevor Mallard a photograph at your factory, you got a grant. Fill out the boxes, provide the photograph, you got a grant. And what did they achieve? Absolutely nothing. We were going backwards our exports were in decline. Mr. Chair. What's more, Mr. Chair, we have brought in a program of productive infrastructure. Years of neglect around our roading infrastructure, being put right at the present time by the current government. And there's not one person sitting in this House who can mount an argument against that. And then there were the years of talk from Pete Hodgson, from Marion Street and from Trevor Mallard about the need to get our broadband network up and running. Talk, talk, talk. And then along came David Cunliffe, and he brought the sword out, chopped the thing to bits, had no idea how to put it back together. And finally, we get a new government that's making the investments that are necessary to see New Zealand capable of performing at the cutting edge in the decades to come. Mr. Speaker, we've unashamedly begun to reform the labour market, and that will mean that more people get a go in the workforce, and how can that be bad? Mr. Speaker, I heard this afternoon people attacking the Prime Minister, saying that he had broken his word to the CTU. Well, Mr. Speaker, I don't know what the CTU thought he said to them, but I can tell you it certainly was not drag New Zealanders back to the Stone Age, give them lower wages and keep them suppressed, because that's what the CTU is all about. Mr. Speaker, we are improving education and skills. We are cutting red tape and regulation. And our trade strategy is working to open up new markets. We've got negotiations right now with Gulf states, with Korea, with India, and we're looking to open those negotiations with Russia. Mr. Speaker, we're supporting business research, not some pie-in-the-sky Mickey Mouse, make-it-up-as-you-go tax credit. Genuine, cash on the table for people that are doing legitimate research, $234 million worth of it, Mr. Chair. We're also wanting to get that link between the science and innovation system and the business community by renaming, not only renaming, but reorganising the way in which the government contributes to science and innovation in New Zealand with the new Science and Innovation Ministry. Mr. Speaker, in my own area, the New Zealand Trade and Enterprise, we've refocused on growing those international markets. No good providing opportunities for people to trade if they don't have the backup to get into those markets. If businesses don't make sales, they can't employ people to make the goods, to process the goods, to add the value to the goods. And so, sir, we have set up the International Growth Fund with a very large amount of discretion as to how New Zealand Trade and Enterprise can assist businesses to get into the international marketplace. Jim Anderton, some years ago, said this country needs 100 new large-scale enterprises if we're going to progress. Well, 9 years later, name just one. Name just one. Well, I could be Sovereign Yachts. Now, there's a classic. They poured millions and millions and millions of dollars into that thing. They had the Prime Minister up there with a photograph. They had Jim Anderton up there getting a photograph. They had everybody lauding all over the country the great success of Sovereign Yachts. And you know what? It was supposed to produce 300 jobs and $600 million worth of revenue for the country inside 5 years. What did it produce? What did it produce? Absolutely nothing. And those examples could be given to this House over and over and over again. Mr. Speaker, in the areas of primary production, we've got a great opportunity with the work that David Carter is doing in making sure that that comes to the fore of where our economic future is going to be most enhanced. It will be the backbone of the New Zealand economy for years to come, and getting the best out of it is the total focus of Mr. Carter and his department. And Mr. Speaker, what my department can do, what economic development can do, is stand alongside those companies who are in international markets to try and make life a bit easier for them. And that's happening with the wine industry, with the aquaculture industry, with the meat industry. Mr. Speaker, those are industries that have enormous capacity for growth. And Labor sit over there saying, oh, where's it all going to come from? It'll come as no surprise that the country with the 4th largest sea space in the world had an aquaculture industry in the year 2000 that produced less than $300 million in exports. Mr. Chair, today it's still the same because those guys neglected it. and we will assist them to be a billion-dollar industry in quick time, Mr. Speaker. That's economic development, not